Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to take a look at the Week 13 Tuesday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. Got Week 13 closing out on a Tuesday night with the Ravens and the Cowboys. Pretty sure this game was supposed to be played like last Thursday, or yeah, I think it was last Thursday this game was supposed to be played, but they had to move it because so many players had tested positive for COVID on the Ravens side. Think we're good to go though. We shouldn't see like any cancellation or anything. Game should be on, so we're gonna break down this showdown slate like we always do. We do have big tournaments once again for this primetime game. $1.5 million tournament on DK, $500K to first, $10 entry fee. Should be a lot of fun. We'll break down this showdown slate like we always do. Start at the top of the player pool, work our way down. I'll hit on all the playable options, all the guys that I do have interest in. Towards the end of the video, we'll take a look at routes construction as well. Talk about different lineup builds, how I'm looking to construct my lineups, who I want to pay up for at captain if I do want to pay up, or if there's any cheaper guys that I like as captain plays. I'll be sure to touch on that as well towards the end of the video. But before we do get started, as always guys, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel, be sure to click the subscribe button as well. I do upload a ton of NFL content to this channel. I'm going to be uploading NBA content daily as well once NBA season does get here, and I believe exactly 3 weeks. We're 3 weeks away from the start of the regular season for NBA. I'll still be making NFL content once NBA gets here, but I'm excited to be uploading daily again. I will be uploading daily NBA videos once the NBA season does get here in 3 weeks. So really excited for that. NBA is by far probably my favorite sport to play. It's definitely the sport I've had the most success in. Just really excited for NBA season overall. So hopefully, if you've tuned in for my NFL content, this entire year, hopefully you'll check out my my NBA stuff as well. I feel like NBA is a sport I'm definitely the most knowledgeable in. I think I know a decent amount for all sports, but NBA is by far the sport I feel like I can help people the most in. So really excited for that. But let's break down this showdown slate. Let's start off at the top. Take a look at the top of the player pool. So Lamar Jackson is our most expensive option overall. He's $11,600 in the flex, and if you want to play Lamar at captain, which obviously you can, he is $17,400. So normally I don't play quarterbacks at captain just because we rarely see quarterbacks at captain in the winning lineup. Normally it's running backs or receivers or just pass catchers in general. But given Lamar Jackson's rushing upside, this is a guy that I think is definitely captain worthy and someone you're for sure going to want to have exposure to. I mean, it's very likely that even if Lamar has a floor game here, that you probably still see him in the winning lineup. I think he's going to be a guy that I want to try and jam in. I don't know if I'm going to jam him in at captain a ton. I think he's captain worthy. You could definitely have exposure to him at captain, but we'll talk about some of these receivers like in the mid-range, some of the running backs as well on the Ravens side I like. So we'll talk about those guys. I think those are the guys I'm probably going to look to at captain the most. But obviously Lamar is a really good play overall. I mean, it's a great matchup. He's at home against the Cowboys. This Cowboys defense has not been good this year. They've really struggled overall. Really hasn't mattered against the pass, against the run. Like, they've just been brutal. It's a great spot for Lamar. I mean, they're at home. They're big favorites. We know this is a Ravens team that, wants to run the ball a ton. Even if they're ahead and playing with a lead, like, Lamar will still run the ball. I know he's not going to throw the ball a ton, but it's just such a good spot. It's a showdown slate with Lamar Jackson on. I mean, I would say it's unlikely that we don't see Lamar in the winning lineup. Even if he has a, kind of a floor game, let's say he only scores 17, 18 points, and which is kind of bad for Lamar. I mean, it's still likely that you see him in the winning lineup just because I'm not too confident we're going to see like a ton of huge performances in this game. I mean, the total is only 45.5. Like, I don't really think we're going to see much of a high-scoring game. I don't think we're going to see like any receivers go for like 100 yards and 2 touchdowns or any running backs go for like, 30 points. So I do like Lamar. I want to try and get him in, whether it's a captain or flex. I think he's going to be a guy that I just have a ton of exposure to. Really hard not to like him here. But on the other side, looking at the quarterback on the other side, you got Andy Dalton for $10K. Normally I want to play at least one of the two quarterbacks. So obviously, because I like Lamar so much, Lamar's going to be the quarterback that I do prefer. But I still think, we can definitely get exposure to Andy Dalton, and we can for sure play both quarterbacks in this game. Dalton hasn't been great since taking over for Dak Prescott in terms of fantasy. He has one game over 20 fantasy points. He does still have a pretty low floor. Like, we've seen games where he can just really disappoint. I mean, the Washington game, I think he got hurt in that one, but against Arizona, 13 fantasy points. Minnesota had 20 DK points, and then most recent game on Thanksgiving against Washington, he had 13 DK points in that game. look, he's not the most sexy option overall. Obviously on the road against the Ravens is not the best spot for Andy Dalton and for this Cowboys offense, but it's a single game showdown slate. We really don't have a ton of options to work with. Even if Dalton has a floor game and only puts up 12 to 14 points, I mean, he could still make the winning lineup just because, like I said earlier, I mean, we've seen some of the receivers on the Cowboys sides have really low floors. We've seen Zeke, since Dak Prescott went down, like Zeke has definitely not been the same. Really, this Cowboys offense as a whole has just not been as efficient. Really, that's no surprise though, but I do like Andy Dalton here. I think, even though it's not the best matchup, I still expect the Cowboys to be throwing a ton. I mean, they're most likely going to be playing from behind. It's pretty much, they've been playing from behind, seems like every week so far. I do like Dalton at 10K. I'm probably going to be playing a good amount of both quarterbacks, but I guess if I can only choose one, I'd rather get to Lamar, but I'd prefer Andy Dalton over Zeke. I know Zeke is going to be a workhorse guy. He's going to get a ton of carries, a ton of touches overall, but we've seen Zeke, the floor on Zeke is definitely a lot lower than it was at the beginning of the year. You look at the beginning of the year when Dak was healthy, when pretty much this entire Cowboys offense was healthy. I mean, 27, 23, 17, 21, 23 DK points. He was just so good, so consistent, getting the volume. Really, since Dak went down, I know their offensive line has been dealing with some injuries as well. Zeke just hasn't been the same, hasn't been nearly as efficient. I mean, you look at his yards per carry, 3.8, 3.3, 2.8. He's definitely touchdown dependent at this point. Normally you wouldn't say that for Zeke. Normally the volume alone would just make him a good play. But if he doesn't score a touchdown, I mean, he's probably going to score, less than 10 Draftkings points. He's not getting great usage in the passing game either like he was at the beginning of the year. We saw games he was getting 4, 7, 11, 8 targets. He's not even getting that, even in games where they're playing from behind. We've seen them playing a lot of Tony Pollard recently. I don't think I'm going to be paying up for Zeke a ton at 10,200. The volume's going to be there for sure, but I'd rather play Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton definitely has a higher floor. Does Andy Dalton have a higher ceiling? Probably not, but in a game where they're going to be most likely playing from behind, going to be throwing a ton, I think that benefits Andy Dalton more than it benefits Zeke. So between Dalton and Zeke, I'd definitely rather play Andy Dalton. Amari Cooper, I do have interest in as a pay-up option. He's 9,600, not that cheap, but he has shown somewhat of a ceiling still. Even with all the quarterback issues for the Cowboys, Amari Cooper has still been able to put up solid numbers. The volume's still been there, 6, 7, 8 targets over his last 3 games. Coming off one of his best games of the year on Thanksgiving against Washington when he had 6 catches, 112 yards and a touchdown, 26 DraftKings points. This is still the upside that Amari Cooper has. Even with Andy Dalton at quarterback, he can still go for over 100 yards and a touchdown. He's still a very talented receiver. Definitely a guy I think is captain worthy. Normally, I like to play running backs and pass catchers at captain, receivers, tight ends. So I for sure will be looking to go with Amari Cooper at captain. I think if I'm paying up, Lamar Jackson, Amari Cooper, those are probably my 2 favorite pay-up options at captain overall. And I do like Andy Dalton as well. I don't think I'll be playing him at captain, but I definitely like him in the flex. Definitely a guy you could look to at 10K. I think, I'm probably going to be playing a lot of both quarterbacks, like I said earlier. But scrolling down, you got J.K. Dobbins at 8,600. This is a guy that I do have a lot of interest in this mid-range. Another guy that I think is for sure captain worthy that I want to have exposure to at captain. He's missed their last 2 games. He was on the COVID list. I can't remember if he tested positive or if he was in close contact. But either way, he's missed their last 2 games on the COVID list, but he's expected back for this game. I don't know if we're going to see him somewhat limited, since he's missed their last 2 games. I'm not sure if how many practices he's been able to get in. But, until we hear otherwise, I'm going to assume Dobbins is full go. Really, we're not going to see any limitations on him. And before he was put on COVID list, Dobbins was clearly taking over this backfield, was leading this backfield in touches almost every week. I mean, just the last 4 games that he had played, 16 touches, 14 touches. The New England game, he only got 6 touches there, but, most recent game that he played in against Tennessee in Week 11, he got 17 touches in that game. Dobbins has been really efficient as a runner. He's got some usage in the passing game as well, seeing 2 targets a game. At 8,600, against this Cowboys defense, this Cowboys run defense that has really struggled this year, I think it is a really good spot for J.K. Dobbins. They're big home favorites. They should be running the ball a ton. I like him a lot at 8,600. Out of all the Ravens running backs, he is definitely my favorite option to go to. I know he's the most expensive, but he seems likely to lead this backfield in touches every week, and I think just as the season progresses, we're going to see Dobbins just continue to separate himself from, Mark Ingram, from Gus Edwards. I think Dobbins is clearly the number 1 running back for the Ravens right now, and even though he's coming off the COVID list and there could maybe be some limitations there, until we hear otherwise, I'm just going to assume that Dobbins is full go. So I like him a lot at 8,600. I think he's the Ravens running back that I definitely have the most interest in this game. But scrolling down to some of these mid-range receivers, we got Marquise Brown at 7,200. We got CeeDee Lamb at 6,600. So Marquise Brown was someone that I talked up a lot on the last Showdown slate when they played the Steelers, and things were not looking great till the very end of the game, and he caught a 70-yard touchdown, which really, kind of sacrificed my day. Was able to make a little bit of profit because of that. I was really high on Brown on the last slate, and I kind of got lucky there with that late 70-yard touchdown that just completely flipped the slate. He got good volume in that game. He got 8 targets. The 70-yard touchdown obviously helped, but Marquise Brown is someone I really have been wrong on this year. Going into this season, I thought he could have the upside to finish as like a top 15, top 20 wide receiver in fantasy. Obviously, that's not going to happen. We know this Ravens team doesn't throw the ball a ton. This isn't a game script where you'd expect them to be throwing a ton. But still, Marquise Brown is a talented receiver. He does have a lot of upside. Between him and like CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, I think because those two guys are cheaper and because I expect the Cowboys to be throwing more, I would rather go to those Cowboys receivers over Marquise Brown, but I still think he's in play. Marquise Brown definitely a guy I would have some exposure to. It is still a really good matchup against a bad Cowboys defense, so I think at 7,200, you could look to Marquise Brown, but I do prefer the cheaper guys. We talked about CeeDee Lamb. We'll talk about Michael Gallup as well at 4,400. So CeeDee Lamb coming in at 6,600. Look, he just continues to get solid volume every week. 6 to 8 targets is pretty much the floor for CeeDee Lamb at this point. It seems like he's getting 6 to 8 targets almost every week. I don't know if he has like the slate-breaking upside. Like since Dak went down, like we haven't really seen like a 100-yard and a touchdown game from CeeDee Lamb. Whereas when Dak was healthy, he had 124 yards against the Giants, 106 yards against Atlanta. Like I don't know if we're going to see those type of games from CeeDee Lamb with Andy Dalton under center, but this is still a guy that can get you 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Can still put up 15, 16 DK points and be a very good flex option. Like I said, I don't know if I want to play him at captain. I think if I'm going to go cheap at captain, I'd rather just go all the way down to Michael Gallup. Hope we can get like maybe a similar kind of performance from Michael Gallup and save some salary so that way we can pay up for other options. I do like CeeDee Lamb in the flex, though. I think he makes a lot of sense as just like a mid-range flex play. If you're building out your lineup and you have enough salary for CeeDee Lamb, I would be totally fine plugging him in there. Between him or Hollywood Brown, I think I do give a slight edge to CeeDee Lamb just because I think his volume is a little bit more secure. Like I said earlier, I think the Cowboys are going to be throwing more because they're most likely going to be playing from behind. So I do have interest in CeeDee Lamb at 6,600. Then, once you get past the backup QBs under 6K, you got the Ravens defense, 5,800. Obviously, it's a really good spot for the Ravens defense facing this Cowboys offense that has been, very turnover prone. We know Andy Dalton will take sacks. He'll turn the ball over, but you guys know me. I don't really spend on defenses on these showdown slates. Defenses, even when they're in a good spot, they still have a really low floor. We saw the Steelers defense on Monday. It was a great spot for them at home against a bad Washington team, and they finished with 2 or 3 fantasy points. Defenses just still can bottom out. They can put up 3, 4 fantasy points. You're going to need a defensive touchdown from the Ravens to be a play that you have to have, or they're going to have to just completely shut out the Cowboys, which I wouldn't expect that to happen. So I'll let other people play the Ravens defense at 5,800. If I'm going to look for cheap options, I'd rather just go down to Michael Gallup, who looks like a great value at 4,400. Even Dalton Schultz at 5,200 you could look to. Mark Ingram, I'll probably be off of Mark Ingram. He's just so hard to trust right now. His volume has been trending down, whereas J.K. Dobbins has been trending up. Ingram, last 3 games that he's played, 5, 7, and 2 touches. I'm not going to go to Mark Ingram. It just doesn't seem like he's going to be too involved anymore in this backfield. Seems like Gus Edwards is kind of taking over that, number 2 role. I know Gus Edwards got to play in that Pittsburgh game without Ingram and without Dobbins. He only got 9 touches in that game. But if I had to predict who's going to lead the backfield in touches, obviously it's going to be J.K. Dobbins. But I'm not going to go to Edwards or to Mark Ingram. I'm just going to play J.K. Dobbins. He's the Ravens running back that I want. If one of these guys somehow scores a touchdown, if they get down to the goal line and Dobbins has to come out and Ingram gets the touchdown or Edwards gets the touchdown, then I'll just be tilted and I'll let other people score there. But I'm not playing Ingram. I'm not playing Edwards. They're just too expensive for me for backup running backs. I'm not going to pay over $5K for backup running backs. But then you got Dalton Schultz at 5,200. You got Michael Gallup at 4,400. These are 2 guys that I like a lot for value. So Dalton Schultz at 5,200. just gets solid volume, 5, 6, 7 targets a week. He's touchdown dependent. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and put up 100 yards, but can he get you 4 catches, 40 yards, and a touchdown and score, 14 points? Absolutely, he can do that. Definitely makes sense as like a cheap flex play that, can get you 10, 12, 13 points. He's going to need to score a touchdown, but in a game where you expect the Cowboys to be throwing a ton, Dalton Schultz should probably be looking at 6 to 8 targets. He's an every down tight end at this point. He's going to be out there a ton running routes. They're going to be looking to throw the ball a ton, and Schultz will be out there. So that's really all you can ask for a cheap pass catcher at 5,200. Now between him or Michael Gallup, I would definitely rather play Michael Gallup. I think Gallup just has more upside. I think Gallup is likely to see more targets as well. This is another guy that's just completely burned me this year. Seems like whenever I don't play Michael Gallup, that's when he actually has like his decent games, and then when I do play him, that's when he puts up 4, 5, 6 points. But he's just getting the volume, and for 4,400, we're getting a guy at 4,400 that has seen 32 targets over his last 4 games. He's seen an average of 8 targets over his last 4 games, and he's only 4,400. Like, sign me up for Michael Gallup as a value play. He's going to be out there a ton. He's an every down wide receiver. He's going to be one of their outside receivers. Going to be running routes, obviously. The Cowboys are going to be throwing a ton in this game. I think Michael Gallup at 4,400 makes a lot of sense as a cheap option. It's going to be hard to predict when he puts up his bigger games, but the volume I think is going to be there. I expect the Cowboys to be throwing a ton. For only 4,400, Gallup is a great value play in my opinion. I think he's one of the better values on this Showdown slate, and I think even as a captain play, I'd be fine playing Michael Gallup at captain in some of my lineups just so I can open up, salary elsewhere, so I can pay up elsewhere. And let's say Michael Gallup has 7 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown, which is totally in his range of outcomes. That's 19 DraftKings points right there. Like, if he scores 19 DK points, he could definitely be in the winning lineup at captain. So 4,400, Michael Gallup is one of my favorite values. I do prefer him over Schultz. I prefer him over the kickers. I prefer him over the defense as well. I really like Michael Gallup at his price tag. But, the kickers, you can always go to the kickers. Normally, I wouldn't play both, but if you want to play one of the two, you could definitely play one of the 2 kickers. Don't really see myself going to the Cowboys defense. Tony Pollard, I think, is not the worst punt option. I don't expect him to be very highly owned at all. We've seen Tony Pollard, when he gets his touches, he is way more efficient than Zeke. He's just a better overall runner than Zeke is at this point. I don't think that's really a hot take either. Tony Pollard seems like this guy, whenever he's on the field, he's putting up at least 5, 6 yards a carry. If Zeke comes out and struggles early, could we see Tony Pollard get 10, 12 touches? I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think if you're playing a lot of lineups, I would probably have Tony Pollard in my player pool. I wouldn't completely X him out because I could see a scenario where he makes the winning lineup. If he gets 10 touches and he gets 60 yards and a touchdown, which is not out of his range of outcomes. He did that against Minnesota in Week 11. 2,600. I don't mind Tony Pollard as just a pure punt play, a GPP dart throw. If you're playing a lot of lineups, I would for sure have him in my player pool. He would be a guy that I get at least a little bit of exposure to because I think, obviously a Zeke injury, which, we don't want that to happen, but a Zeke injury or just Zeke struggling, maybe Zeke fumbles early on, we could see a lot of Tony Pollard. And, at this point, I think they're not going to give Zeke as heavy of a workload as they were giving him at the beginning of the year. I think we're slowly starting to see Tony Pollard eat into that workload. Just like the last 4 games, Pollard's got 9, 10, 5, 6 touches. At the beginning of the year, he was only getting 2 or 3 touches a game. Now he's getting 7 or 8 touches a game. Could sometimes see more than that. So at 2,600, as a pure punt play, I don't mind Tony Pollard. Luke Wilson was the starting tight end last week with Mark Andrews out, and Mark Andrews is still expected to be out for this game. I'm pretty sure Wilson did drop a touchdown last week against Pittsburgh. He only got 2 targets, but one of them was in the red zone, was in the end zone. He could have had a better game. For 1,800, probably won't be going to Luke Wilson, even though he did get 2 targets last week and he did drop a touchdown. I just don't think I want to go there. Don't want to go to Justice Hill. Probably won't go to Cedric Wilson either, but Dez Bryant for 1K, I think is in play as just a cheap option overall. He was someone that I was also very high on the last Showdown slate. He did not have a good game at all. He got 2 targets. He finished with 0 catches. He finished with 0 DraftKings points. But with no Willie Snead, with no Mark Andrews, those guys are still out. I mean, we should see Dez Bryant more involved. They did sign him to their active roster. He's on their active roster now. He had a decent game week 11, 5 targets, 4 catches for 28 yards. I mean, he's facing his old team. Like, if you're someone that buys into Narrative Street, I mean, Dez Bryant against the Cowboys, like, you got to think he wants to do something against his former team. He probably wants to try and show him up a little bit. I'm not someone that really buys into Narrative Street much, especially not like for NFL, but Dez against his former team, if you want to buy the narrative, he's only 1K. He's a really cheap option. As a pure punt play, I don't mind Dez Bryant. Like, similar to Tony Pollard, if I'm playing a lot of lineups, I think he would be a guy that I would still leave in my player pool at 1K. And Duvernay, I think, is also a guy you could look to. He kind of took over the Willie Snead role, which I thought Dez Bryant would do, but it was actually Duvernay who played like over 70% of the snaps last week. He only got targeted 3 times. He turned that into 3 catches for 20 yards. I mean, if Duvernay's going to be on the field for over 70% of the snaps, if he's going to be out there running routes, at only $800, like, could you do worse? I mean, if you want to try and fit in all those top-tier options, if you want to fit in Lamar, Andy Dalton, Amari Cooper, like, if you want to pay up for all those guys, I mean, you're going to have to find some value. So I don't mind Duvernay either. Duvernay, Pollard, Dez Bryant. I think if I'm, looking for punt plays, like, under 3K, those are probably the guys I would consider punt plays that could somehow make the winning lineup. They at least have the potential to make the winning lineup. So really, once you get past Duvernay, though, there's no one else I'm considering. But yeah, guys, I think we broke down the player pool. I think we talked about all the playable options. So let's go ahead and hit on roster construction real quick before we do end the video. Talk about how I'm looking to build out my lineup. So I think if I'm paying up at captain, Amari Cooper is probably one of my favorite pay-up options at captain. Normally I like to play receivers or running backs at captain. So let's build out a lineup with Amari Cooper at captain. If we are doing that, if we're assuming that Cooper has a big game, obviously we want to correlate our lineups and pair Andy Dalton with him. So we plug in Andy Dalton there at 10K, and that leaves us 6,400 remaining per player. So let's maybe go with a guy like J.K. Dobbins. I talked about it earlier how much I like J.K. Dobbins in that mid-range. We plug in Dobbins there. That leaves us 56, 66 remaining for our last 3 spots, at least per player. I don't know if we'll be able to pay up for Lamar into this build. If we go with Lamar, that leaves us 2,700. Oh, I think we'd actually have enough for Michael Gallup and then enough for Dez. So, that's a build that fits perfectly. Amari Cooper at captain with Andy Dalton with Michael Gallup, and then on the other side we got Lamar, J.K. Dobbins, and Dez Bryant. I don't hate that lineup at all. Obviously Dez Bryant is the wild card there, but on these showdown slates, I like to play these guys that are risky, that no one's going to play, because that's really what wins you these showdown slates. Like, if Dez Bryant scores a touchdown, he could easily wind up in the winning lineup. I mean, if you don't feel great about Dez, you could always go to Duvernay, who is a little bit cheaper. You could play him, and, he was on the field more than Dez was. I still think I think there's some narrative here with Dez against his former team. I still think he's going to see a few targets. Duvernay was on the field more, so Duvernay might be the safer play, but either way, Dez, Duvernay, whichever one you want to go with, I'm fine plugging them into this build just because it makes it work. And this is a build that I do like quite a bit. I feel confident about pretty much everyone in this lineup. I guess Dez is the one wild card, though. But usually, you'll see the winning lineups. I mean, there's always one wild card in there. It could be Dez. It could be Duvernay. It could be Tony Pollard. Those are guys I would definitely have, in my player pool for this showdown slate. I at least have some exposure to if I'm playing a lot of lineups. But that's a build that I like with like a pay-up option at captain. Maybe, if you're going to the mid-range, if you're looking for like a mid-range captain play, I think J.K. Dobbins would for sure be my favorite guy there. I do like him a lot as a captain play, but if I'm maybe looking for a cheap captain, we talked about it earlier. I do like Michael Gallup as a cheap captain play for 6,600. Same rules apply. If I'm playing a Dallas pass catcher at captain, I want to pair him with Andy Dalton at 10,600. Because we went so cheap at captain, that should allow us to pay up for Lamar as well. And, I want to try and get in Lamar into as many lineups as I can. So once we go with Lamar there, I mean, we got 7,200, just over 7,200 remaining per player for our last 3 spots. So we got plenty of salary to work with. Like, we could maybe go with Zeke or Cooper. We could maybe go with J.K. Dobbins. Like, let's plug in J.K. Dobbins because he's one of my favorite plays on this show on slate. I love the spot for him. Plugging him in, that leaves us 6,600 remaining per player. Let's just see what we can work with. So if we go with Zeke in our last spot, that leaves us 3K. I probably don't want to play Zeke and Pollard together. I guess you could play Dez there and just leave salary on the table. But if we drop down from Zeke to Amari, that leaves us 3,600. So then we could play the Dallas kicker. So I guess that is a build that you could do. You could go with Amari and then the kicker in that lineup. Like, that's a lineup that I do also like quite a bit. If we drop down from Amari, though, to maybe like a Hollywood Brown, that leaves us enough to play not really much that we could do. If we drop down from Brown to Lamb, then that leaves us, really kind of the same thing, not much to work with besides like the defense or the backup running backs, which I don't want to go to. I guess you could play Dalton Schultz there, but honestly, I think the Amari build, or going with Amari there and then going with the Cowboys kicker, that's probably my favorite build just to fill out that 6. You got Michael Gallup at captain paired with Andy Dalton. You got Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, Amari Cooper, and Greg Zuerlein. So another lineup that I'm pretty confident in. I think overall my favorite captain plays, if I'm paying up, it's definitely Lamar Jackson, Amari Cooper as pay-up options. If I'm going to the mid-range, I think J.K. Dobbins is definitely my favorite mid-range captain. And then if I'm looking for a cheap guy, just kind of like a dart throw, a guy that probably nobody's going to play at captain, I think Michael Gallup for $4,400 or $6,600 as a captain play. I assume his captain ownership will probably be 5%, 6%, if less than that. So I'm totally fine playing him at captain to get in all the rest of the studs into my build. And I could see a scenario where Gallup does make the winning lineup at captain if he has like 7 catches, 80 yards, a touchdown, which is totally in his range of outcomes here. So yeah, guys, I think we broke everything down. Talked about the player pool, the guys I have the most interest in. Hit on roster construction as well. Looked at a few lineup builds that I like. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I do appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed, before you get out of here, hit that like button down below. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload and you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my videos and if you want to get more content from me, I do have stuff available on Patreon that is linked down below in the description for those of you that are interested. You can see more that I do have to offer over on Patreon. But yeah, best of luck on the slate, guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hope you win some money, and we will see you in the next one. Good luck, guys. Peace.